Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Elimination Chamber review. An Elimination Chamber just ended an hour ago, and oh my god, this pay-per-view fucking sucked tonight. This show was absolutely fucking abysmal. This was the worst pay-per-view of the year so far. Just absolutely god awful. This show was a complete waste of time. A waste of time. And then we got Fastlane coming up, which Fastlane should not even be taking place 2 weeks before WrestleMania. Oh my gosh, strap yourselves in because this is a long road to WrestleMania. But what do we get on the show tonight? We had the Elimination Chamber, of course, the SmackDown and the Raw Elimination Chamber matches, where the Raw Elimination Chamber had the WWE Championship on the line, which obviously it was predictable. We all knew, even going into the Elimination Chamber, we all know who was going to come out the winner. What else did you have? You had the triple threat match for the United States Championship. We had the Women's Tag Team Championships on the line. The Raw Women's Championship match, which was supposed to be Lacey Evans versus Asuka, was canceled. It was taken off the card because, of course, Lacey Evans ended up announcing on last week on Monday Night Raw that she was pregnant. So they took the match off of the card. Keith Lee was supposed to be in the triple threat match tonight, but he was advertised for it. But then at the last minute, WWE ended up taking him out of the match. So we had a match that was on the Kickoff Show to determine who would replace Keith Lee in the triple threat match. But this show, like I said, the show was absolutely fucking terrible. This is the worst pay-per-view of the year so far. And I don't want to spend too much time on this review. I know I say that and then the review will be like 30, 40 minutes. Hopefully make this review short, because the show was fucking terrible, like I said. So let's start off the match that was on the Kickoff Show. It was a fatal four-way to determine who would replace Keith Lee in the triple threat match for the United States Championship later on the night. They will be in the match with Bobby Lashley and Matt Riddle. So it was Mustafa Ali versus Elias versus Ricochet versus John Morrison. And the match itself was just very meh, in my opinion. We had Mustafa Ali come out along with T-Bar, T-Balls, Slapjack, Flapjack, and Mace. John Morrison made his way out next. Of course, he didn't have the MIZ by him. So Ricochet then came out, and then Elias. Elias didn't have Jackson Riker with him. So the match ended up started. Ricochet ended up taking out Mustafa Ali. Morrison and Elias ended up double teaming on Ricochet. Ali ended up rolling out to the floor. Ricochet then fired off Morrison and Elias, which he ended up kicking Morrison out of the ring. Ricochet then unloaded on Elias and ended up kicking him out of the ring. He tried to go for a springboard out onto them, but Ali ended up rolling him from behind for a 2 count. Morrison then took control on Mustafa Ali, but Elias ended up taking out Morrison, and Mustafa Ali ended up taking Ricochet to the corner. So at the end of the match, you had Ricochet end up delivering a 450 to Mustafa Ali, but Mace, T-Bar, and Slapjack ended up saving Mustafa Ali. Ricochet then ended up flying out, and he got caught by Mace and T-Bar. Mace and T-Bar then ended up launching Ricochet into the ring post. John Morrison ended up taking advantage of the distraction. Morrison then rolled up Mustafa Ali, and there you go. John Morrison ended up winning the match. He gets to replace Keith Lee in the triple threat match for the United States Championship later on in the night. So that was that. But overall, the match was just very meh, in my opinion. And with Keith Lee being taken out of the United States Championship match, the triple threat match, I understand that from what I heard that he's injured. And, Keith Lee on the main roster has been a failure. He's been a failure on the main roster. I guess we could all sing, "Oh, buried in his glory," because that's what it feels like. Keith Lee is buried on the main roster. He needs to go back down to NXT. Triple H needs to get Keith Lee back down to NXT. Better yet, have Triple H take not only Keith Lee, but get Andrade, Cien Almas, and get Aleister Black. Triple H should get those three guys back down to NXT. If they're not being used on the main roster, get them back down to NXT. Because obviously, Vince and Bruce Pritchard aren't even using them correctly. Aleister Black. When was the last time we saw Aleister Black on TV? Was he last shown on TV in October? I can't even remember. It's been a while since we've seen Aleister Black, since we haven't seen Aleister Black on TV. Andrade? Can't remember the last time that he was on TV. But Keith Lee, he's already a failure on the main roster. And then we went to the regular matches on the card. The pay-per-view kicked off with the Elimination Chamber match, the number one contenders Elimination Chamber match. The winner will get to face Roman Reigns after the match for the Universal Championship. It was Kevin Owens versus Jey Uso versus Daniel Bryan versus Sami Zayn versus Cesaro versus Corbin. And this was a good chamber match. I actually really enjoyed this chamber match. But the end, after the chamber match, where Roman ended up getting to face his opponent with the Universal Championship on the line, it just made the chamber match just absolutely pointless, in my opinion. So Kevin Owens ended up coming out first. And then we had Sami Zayn come out with his film crew. So Sami Zayn entered his pod, as did Kevin Owens. And we had Sami Zayn arguing with Jessica Carr out there because she ordered Sami Zayn's film crew to go backstage. So Sami Zayn wasn't happy about that. He was arguing with her. Out came Corbin next, then Jey Uso, and Kevin Owens was shown headbutting his pod a couple of times. Daniel Bryan and Cesaro then made their way out. So we had a point where Cesaro ended up slamming his head on the pod, on Sami Zayn's pod, which was funny. So Daniel Bryan and Cesaro started off the chamber match. And we had Cesaro and Daniel Bryan go back and forth. Daniel Bryan ended up sending Cesaro into the steel. And then Cesaro ended up barely landing on his feet, and he hit the steel wall. Daniel Bryan then followed it up with a knee from the top of the steel. Daniel Bryan ended up bringing Cesaro back in, ended up delivering a missile dropkick from the top to Cesaro. went for the cover, which Cesaro ended up kicking out at 2. Yet Cesaro earlier tried to catch Daniel Bryan with a backbreaker, and he went for the cover, which Daniel Bryan ended up kicking out at 2. Daniel Bryan then delivered some kicks in the corner, and Daniel Bryan ended up taking Cesaro to the top, and Cesaro ended up countering it. So then we had Corbin end up entering the chamber. So Daniel Bryan ended up joining Corbin and Cesaro. Corbin launched Daniel Bryan into the chain wall, and Corbin was just smearing Daniel Bryan's face into the steel. So Corbin then ended up launching Cesaro back into the ring. Corbin ended up missing Daniel Bryan in the corner. Daniel Bryan then ended up decking Cesaro, and then he hit Corbin. Cesaro ended up hitting his uppercut on both Daniel Bryan and Corbin. We had Corbin end up catching Cesaro. He delivered the deep 6 to Cesaro. And Corbin ended up delivering also the deep 6 to Daniel Bryan, which Corbin went for the cover, and Daniel Bryan ended up kicking out of it. Corbin then ended up getting a 2 count on Cesaro. So Corbin then ended up decking Daniel Bryan with the elbow to the head. He ended up sending Daniel Bryan into the steel platform. So Sami Zayn was the next one to get out of his pod, and Corbin was waiting on Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn shut the door of his pod to try to stay in there. So Daniel Bryan ended up running over, and he ended up nailing a flying knee on Corbin from behind. And Sami Zayn was just yelling at Corbin. Cesaro was shown opening the other side of Sami Zayn's pod. So Cesaro came inside Sami Zayn's pod, started unloading on him inside of it. Cesaro ended up beating Sami Zayn out of the pod, and he unloaded with uppercuts. So Cesaro was just being on Sami Zayn around the steel. And we had Cesaro end up doing the swing on Corbin, and Cesaro went right into the sharpshooter on Corbin. Corbin ended up tapping out, so Corbin was eliminated. And so the next one to come out of the pod was Kevin Owens. So when Kevin Owens came out from his pod, Sami Zayn was trying to talk Kevin Owens into teaming up with him, for old time's sake. So Kevin Owens then rammed Sami Zayn into the pod a couple of times. Kevin Owens was fighting Daniel Bryan, and he ended up hitting a German suplex on Daniel Bryan. Cesaro came over and uppercutted Kevin Owens. Owens ended up fighting back as him and Cesaro were brawling. Kevin Owens then did a enziguri, and he ended up dropping Cesaro. So there was a point where Kevin Owens ended up delivering a cannonball to Cesaro. He did one to Daniel Bryan, and then to Sami Zayn. So Sami Zayn ended up coming, and he ended up hitting a suplex on Kevin Owens. And then the last one to come out of the pod was Jey Uso. So Kevin Owens ended up putting Cesaro down, and Kevin Owens ended up getting the upper hand, which sent Jey Uso into the wall. And Kevin Owens ended up delivering a stunner to Daniel Bryan, and then delivered a stunner to Cesaro. Sami Zayn then ended up missed delivering a haluva kick. Kevin Owens ended up dropping Sami Zayn with the stunner. He went and eliminated Sami Zayn. So Sami Zayn was eliminated. And as soon as Sami Zayn was making his way out of the chamber, Jey Uso ended up attacking Kevin Owens. He did a thumb to the eye. He raked the eyes of Kevin Owens. And Jey Uso then slammed the chamber door on Kevin Owens' arm. So Kevin Owens was defenseless. He was screaming out in pain. His arm was trapped in the chamber door. Jey Uso ended up unloading super kicks to Kevin Owens. So the officials end up freeing Kevin Owens, but Jey Uso ended up super kicking Owens again. Jey Uso went to the top and he delivered a frog splash. He went for the pin on Owens, so Owens was eliminated. And so then it came down to Jey Uso, Cesaro, and Daniel Bryan. There was a point in the match where Cesaro ended up having Jey Uso, and he was swinging Jey Uso into the steel wall. And there was a point where he ended up slamming Jey Uso's face into the steel. So it kind of looked like Jey Uso's face really went in face first into the steel. So, but later on, you had Jey Uso going to the top and delivered a frog splash on Cesaro, which Cesaro got eliminated because of that, because Jey Uso ended up pinning Cesaro. Then it was down to Jey Uso and Daniel Bryan. Jey Uso ended up going to the top, hit the frog splash on Daniel Bryan, went for the cover. Daniel Bryan kicked out. So Jey Uso then climbed to the top of a pod, and he leapt and delivered another frog splash, but Daniel Bryan was able to get his knees up. So Daniel Bryan then delivered the running knee on Jey Uso, went for the cover. There you go. Daniel Bryan ended up winning the match, and he gets to face Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. So then, Roman wasted no time. He came out along with Paul Heyman. So we had the match, Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns, Universal Championship on the line, which watching this match, it just completely made a good chamber match completely pointless. So you had the bell end up ringing, Reigns ended up entering the ring, Daniel Bryan ended up telling the referee that he was ready for the match. Reigns immediately ended up hitting the spear to Daniel Bryan, but Daniel Bryan ended up countering it and locked in the yes lock on Roman, which was pretty cool. That fast, Daniel Bryan ended up locking in the yes lock. So Reigns ended up finally breaking the yes lock. He ended up mounting Daniel Bryan with hands. Reigns ended up slamming Daniel Bryan in the middle of the ring. Reigns ended up applying the guillotine on Daniel Bryan, and the referee ended up calling for the bell, so Roman Reigns ended up winning the match, retaining the Universal Championship. Obviously, it was a good chamber match, but just made the match completely pointless with Daniel Bryan winning and then losing to Roman. And then post-match, we had Edge appearing out of nowhere. Edge ended up delivering the spear to Roman, and Edge then pointed up at the WrestleMania sign. And it looks like Edge has made his choice for WrestleMania. So it's going to be Edge versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. I'm not even excited for the match. I'm not excited to see Edge versus Roman Reigns. They should have did Edge versus Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. I don't know why WWE is going with Edge versus Roman at WrestleMania. Oh, because it's spear versus spear. And people really think, oh yeah, Edge is going to take the Universal Championship off of Roman. He's not. This just solidified here that Edge is losing at WrestleMania. People think, oh yeah, he's going to take the title off of Roman. No, he's not. So Edge just solidified his loss there at WrestleMania to Roman. Roman is walking out of WrestleMania still the Universal Champion. And then we had Bad Bunny backstage. Bad Bunny was on SNL last night. During his performance, he had the garbage Ninja Turtle 24/7 title while he was performing. So Bad Bunny was backstage with Sonya Deville. Sonya Deville ended up telling him that if he needs anything, to come and see her. So he had the Miz end up interrupting. Miz ended up shoving Bad Bunny back. Bad Bunny ended up slapping the Miz. So, because you had the Miz and Bad Bunny having some words, Miz ended up turning back around to fight Bad Bunny, but Damian Priest was in his way. So that was that. But I don't give a shit about Bad Bunny and the Miz, which I will get to later on, because there's no reason why that this should have happened tonight, because it was so stupid to do. And then we had the triple threat match for the United States Championship. Matt Riddle versus John Morrison versus Bobby Lashley. John Morrison, of course, replacing Keith Lee, who was injured. But this match was just meh, in my opinion. And we had Matt Riddle come out first, and then John Morrison. And Bobby Lashley came out along with MVP. MVP was shown using crutches because he got injured last Monday night on Raw. So we had Lashley start off the match. Lashley ended up knocking Morrison out of the ring into the barricade. And he ended up ramming John Morrison into the ring post. Matt Riddle then ran over. Bobby Lashley ended up grabbing him, launched him over his head to the floor. And then Lashley ended up bringing in Matt Riddle back into the ring, ended up nailing a neck breaker. So Lashley ended up getting the upper hand. He ended up clearing the ring once again. Matt Riddle and John Morrison ended up unloading on Bobby Lashley in the corner. Lashley then delivered the spine buster on John Morrison, and he ended up fighting Matt Riddle off. Lashley then delivered a spear to Matt Riddle in the corner. And we had Matt Riddle and John Morrison were trading offense. And Matt Riddle ended up delivering a Pele kick. And he ended up launching Morrison across the ring from the corner. And at the end of the match, we had a point where MVP was yelling at John Morrison. He was taunting John Morrison. Morrison ended up grabbing one of MVP's crutches, and he uses the crutch on Bobby Lashley. So Lashley then ended up applying the Hurt Lock on Morrison. Matt Riddle ended up breaking the Hurt Lock up with the crutch. He was just hitting crutch shots to send Lashley out of the ring. Matt Riddle then delivered the Bro Derek to John Morrison. He went for the cover. There you go. Matt Riddle is your new United States Champion. Post-match, you had Matt Riddle grabbing the title, ran off to the stage. Bobby Lashley was shown pissed off. So that was that. There you go. Matt Riddle is your new United States Champion. Overall, just a very meh match. And then we had the Women's Tag Team Championship match. Bianca Belair, Sasha Banks versus Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. This was god-awful. This was an awful match. We had, of course, Reginald getting involved here. Reginald came down almost towards the end of the match. He came out with a bottle of champagne and also a glass. So Sasha ended up dropping Nia Jax into a bank statement, which it was broken. Reginald then ended up handing Sasha the bottle of champagne. And Sasha had this confused look on her face. She was like, "Oh, why are you giving this to me?" So the referee then ended up seeing the bottle of champagne that Sasha was holding. The referee ended up snatching the bottle from Sasha, which then Nia Jax ended up taking advantage of the match, of the distraction. She ended up nailing the Samoan drop on Sasha. So there you go. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler win the match, retain the women's tag team titles. But terrible, god-awful match. And we did not get Sasha turn heel on Bianca. I thought that that WWE would make Sasha turn heel on Bianca tonight to set up their build towards their match at WrestleMania. We did not get that. Sasha turn heel is going to possibly happen on a edition of SmackDown. I can see that happen. They can't do it at Fastlane because Fastlane is the next pay-per-view that we're going to be getting. Fastlane is 2 weeks before WrestleMania. So we're obviously not going to get the heel turn at Fastlane. It's going to happen on a edition of SmackDown. And do we need Fastlane? Fastlane is not needed 2 weeks before WrestleMania. And then post-match, we saw Reginald come to the ring. He ended up apologizing to Sasha because Bianca ended up checking in on her. Who cares? Reginald needs to stay off TV. And then we see MVP backstage. MVP was shown talking to the Miz. And we could not make out what both of them were saying. So we saw that. And then we had Sheamus versus Randy Orton versus Kofi Kingston versus AJ Styles versus Jeff Hardy versus Drew McIntyre. The Elimination Chamber match for the WWE Championship. Man, was this chamber match absolutely fucking boring. It was awful. I mean, going into the match, we all knew who was going to come out winning the match. So it was predictable. So Drew McIntyre made his way out first. And then we had Styles come out with Omos. Main event, the Elimination Chamber match for the WWE Championship. Sheamus versus Randy Orton versus Kofi Kingston versus AJ Styles versus Jeff Hardy versus Drew McIntyre. And my God, this match was so boring, in my opinion. Absolutely boring. It felt like this match went on for an hour. And going into the match, we all knew who was going to come out winning the match. Obviously, it was predictable. But Drew McIntyre came out first. Of course, he's the WWE Champion. Then next came AJ Styles. Styles came out with Omos. Styles and McIntyre were both locked into their pods. Kofi Kingston was out next. And then Sheamus. And then Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton started off the chamber match, which Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton, it's no different. How many times have we seen Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton go at it? Nothing new that was here. The first guy who was let out of his pod was Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton unload on each other. There you go. That's another thing. How many times have we seen McIntyre and Orton? Nothing new in this chamber. So Kofi was the next one to come out of his pod. And then we had Styles coming out next because we saw Omos ripping Styles' pod door off of the back. So he ended up freeing Styles. Styles ended up looking to be leaving. And Orton ended up getting eliminated. So Orton made his way out, leaving Styles to go into the chamber. And with Orton being eliminated, we all thought that Bray Wyatt might show up Unfortunately, he didn't. Bray Wyatt didn't show up. Because I thought that, we would get Bray Wyatt tonight, him attack Randy Orton, and then that sets up for their match at WrestleMania. We did not get that. So Styles ended up running into the chamber. He tried to pin Jeff Hardy, but Kofi ended up saving it, ended up kicking it out. And then Adam Pearce was shown out there. Adam Pearce was shown. He was yelling in Omos's face. He ended up telling Omos to go to the back after what he just did. So Styles was trying to argue with Adam Pearce. But Pearce, like I said, sent Omos to the back. So Kofi ended up delivering a tornado DDT to Styles on the steel. We had McIntyre end up fighting Jeff Hardy off. Drew McIntyre delivered some chops to Jeff Hardy. Later on, Sheamus ended up coming out of his pod. And towards the end of the match, you had Drew McIntyre win the match where Styles was waiting for McIntyre to get up. Styles went for the phenomenal forearm, and McIntyre ended up delivering the Claymore. So there you go. Drew McIntyre ended up winning the match, retaining the WWE Championship. Obviously predictable. And this is where me and a lot of fans got fucking pissed off. And why I say that this is the worst pay-per-view of the year so far. So we had the chamber match for the WWE Championship, which was god-awful. So then after post-match, after the chamber, we had Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley came out and he ended up delivering the spear to McIntyre. Lashley then ended up throwing McIntyre out of the ring, ended up launching McIntyre into the barricade. Lashley then ended up running McIntyre into the ring post. He then slammed McIntyre's head into the announce table. Lashley then brought McIntyre back into the ring. Lashley then applied the Hurt Lock on McIntyre. So Lashley was just manhandling McIntyre, drived him into the mat. And then we had The Miz come out. The Miz ran out with his Money in the Bank briefcase and also a referee. So The Miz ended up cashing in the briefcase. So then it became The Miz versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. Referee ended up checking on Drew McIntyre. McIntyre was shown barely able to move after Lashley ended up beating the hell out of him. So the referee rings the bell. Miz ended up charging with the kick. Miz then dropped McIntyre with the DDT, went for the cover, and McIntyre ended up kicking out at 2. And so Miz then nailed the skull-crushing finale, and then he went for the cover. And there you go. The Miz is the new WWE Champion. Unbelievable. Absolutely fucking terrible. God awful. I'm like, what year is it? Is it 2010 or 2021? I will never get. The Miz is WWE Champion in 2021. Awful. God awful. Why did they put the championship on The Miz? The Miz, if he was a main eventer, if WWE booked him as a strong main eventer, then I would buy him as WWE Champion. But they booked The Miz as a clown heel with John Morrison. They were both clowns on TV. They weren't believable. So you have The Miz, like I said, as WWE Champion. John Morrison is going to go off as a singles competitor. So what does this do now? I sense some things that WWE could do. First thing that WWE could do is Bobby Lashley could face The Miz for the WWE Championship at Fastlane. Because we all know the Miz's title reign will be short here. If WWE has the Miz take the title into WrestleMania, I would be surprised. Because, here, like I said, here's what I would see. Bobby Lashley will have this little feud with the Miz. Bobby Lashley can say, oh yeah, I'm challenging you for the WWE Championship. They book the match at Fastlane. Bobby Lashley wins the WWE Championship at Fastlane. Drew McIntyre gets his rematch. Rematch clause. So, Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre could have this feud. Drew McIntyre will face Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. The WWE Championship is on the line. Drew McIntyre wins the WWE Championship at WrestleMania in front of fans. Since they couldn't do it last year because Drew McIntyre won it at the Performance Center, or the Capitol Wrestling Center is what they're calling the Performance Center now. So I guess they want to redo that and have fans cheer for Drew McIntyre when he wins the WWE Championship back. Or another option I see, and this will scare me, because I thought of this. This would absolutely scare me, and I know some of you. What if WWE doesn't take the title off of The Miz? What if we see The Miz versus Bad Bunny at WrestleMania? And Bad Bunny wants to face The Miz with the WWE Championship on the line. Because, of course, The Miz is feuding with Bad Bunny here. What if, like I said, they booked The Miz versus Bad Bunny at WrestleMania, the WWE Championship on the line, and Bad Bunny is the one who pins The Miz, and Bad Bunny becomes the WWE Champion. If that happens, God help us all. Oh man, I'm getting chills just thinking of it. I don't want to see WWE do that. That would be fucking terrible. That would be one of the worst WrestleMania moments ever. Oh my God, The Miz is WWE Champion. Terrible. Monday Night Raw, the ratings for Monday Night Raw are going to be in an absolute low even more with The Miz as champion. I would not expect Monday Night Raw's ratings to be a 1.4, a 1.3. Because I sense that's where it's going to go. That's what the Raw ratings are going to be. Now that The Miz is champion. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if they get a 1.0. Which, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for, if Monday Night Raw is always terrible, I would expect sometime Monday Night Raw getting a 1.0 rating. It's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. But this pay-per-view was so fucking awful. Terrible. One of the worst pay-per-views of the year so far. But anyways, that's it for my review of Elimination Chamber. Don't want to talk about this fucking show anymore. So, thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up. Comment, subscribe. And I will see you all tomorrow for Monday Night Raw. So until then, see you all later.